I want you to think, just for a second, about the last time you were scrolling on your phone.
Oh, boy.
Right. You're swiping past the usual stuff, a recipe you're, never going to make, or maybe someone's vacation photo.
Yeah, the standard feed.
Exactly. And then suddenly, a video just stops you in your tracks.
Mm.
Maybe it's deeply provocative, or maybe it highlights this massive global injustice, or it just sparks this really profound, heavy wave of sorrow.
Yeah, you feel it right in your chest.
You really do, even if just for a split second. Your heart rate might even tick up a bit.
Right.
And then what do?
You swipe up.
You swipe up. You just keep scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, within 3 seconds, you're watching a video of, like, a cat falling off a kitchen counter.
It's so true. We all do it.
We all do it. But the real question we're digging to today is, what does that whiplash actually do to us?
That's the core of it.
Yeah. Like, what happens to our minds when we constantly consume the world's pain, experience this fleeting emotion, and then just immediately move on?
I mean, it creates what is arguably the defining psychological paradox of our current era.
Wow.
Yeah, because we've built a society where we are hyper-exposed to everything, right? But we're physically engaged with almost nothing. We're carrying the cognitive load of a global citizen, but we're doing it from the total isolation of our couches.
Which is exactly why we're so excited to welcome you to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We are exploring an incredible narrative today, and it's called The Responsibility of Standing Still. Small Steps Towards Civilization.
It is such a powerful piece of writing.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack this story because it tackles that exact digital paralysis we just talked about.
Right.
It explores this massive, necessary transition from being a passive, screen-obsessed spectator to becoming an active, real-world participant.
Yes.
And it does so by looking at what happens when we finally stop staring at the burning world on our screens and, well, actually look at the quiet room around us.
I love how the narrative starts, too, because it diagnoses the root of the problem right at the psychological core.
All right, it doesn't hold back.
No, it issues this very stark warning about something it calls the danger of a hardened ego.
A hardened ego.
Exactly. And it suggests that this frozen, kind of calloused ego isn't a character flaw. It's actually a defense mechanism.
Interesting.
Yeah, one that we developed specifically to survive that exact scrolling habit you just described.
So it's essentially emotional callus building. Like, we're exposed to so much distress that we have to numb out just to function.
Precisely. I mean, if you look at the mechanics of compassion fatigue, the human brain simply did not evolve to process the suffering of 8 billion people in real time.
Oh, absolutely not.
So when you see a disaster video, your brain secretes stress hormones like cortisol.
You get that fight or flight response.
Right.
Yeah.
You feel the urge to help. But because you're staring at a piece of glass thousands of miles away from the event.
You can't do anything.
Right. You have no physical outlet for that urge. The loop never closes.
Oh, wow.
So to protect you from constant agonizing cortisol spikes, your ego just builds a wall. That makes so much sense.
And the narrative posits a pretty radical solution to this. It says that true ethical development begins by intentionally delaying our reactions to that provocative digital content.
Okay.
It asks us to transition from merely watching the world burn to interrogating our own internal state.
And that brings us to a really fascinating character in the story named Roger.
Yes, Roger.
Because Roger is living with this exact mental friction. He's overwhelmed, and he calls up his uncle and admits, very simply, he says, "My mind is a bit tangled."
Such a great way to phrase it.
Isn't it? And his uncle's response is just so grounded. He doesn't ask Roger to, explain his geopolitical anxieties or offer a thesis statement.
Nope.
He just says, "Come, the door is open and the tea is already brewed."
Notice the immediate shift the narrative makes right there.
Yeah, it's a big gear shift.
It really is. It pulls Roger out of that abstract, infinite digital space,
Right.
and it drops him into a highly tangible, finite, physical reality, an open door, hot tea. These are grounding elements that demand a sensory response. And the physical shift is described so beautifully. Roger arrives, stepping out of the cool air, and he takes off his shoes in this incredibly quiet house.
Mm-hmm.
The story notes that the quiet inside was the kind that loosens a person's shoulders, and that no one was in a hurry here.
That lack of hurry is the physiological antidote to the scrolling mechanism.
Say more about that.
Well, digital spaces are designed to keep the sympathetic nervous system on high alert.
Right, always on edge.
Exactly. They demand instant, hurried reactions. But a physical sanctuary, where no one is in a hurry, that engages the parasympathetic nervous system.
It tells your body to chill out.
Yes. It signals to the body that it is safe to decompress. The shoulders drop because that perceived existential threat of the feed is finally gone.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Uncle says something from the kitchen right as Roger is taking off his shoes that serves as the foundation for this whole concept.
Oh, this is the best line.
It really is. He calls out, "Sometimes a person wants to fix the world, but first he must learn to place his shoes properly." I mean, to me, it's like someone wanting to become a master chef to cure global hunger, but they absolutely refuse to learn how to chop an onion.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to frame it.
Right. We constantly crave these grand, sweeping solutions to massive problems.
Yeah.
But we want to skip right past the mundane, foundational steps of just being a functional human in our immediate space.
You can't skip the onion and you can't skip the shoes.
Exactly.
The psychological trap of the internet is that it makes us feel like the CEOs of the universe.
Jesus.
We're invited to weigh in on macroeconomic policy or international conflicts, which, makes the act of placing our shoes in the hallway feel incredibly trivial.
Like, doesn't matter.
Right. But the grand solutions are abstract. They require no real accountability from us. The mundane requires immediate physical discipline.
Which totally explains Roger's reaction.
Yeah.
He smiles, but it's a very vulnerable moment for him.
Yeah.
He confesses to his uncle, "I think I reflect on many things, but I touch very little." I mean, that phrase, "I touch very little," it feels like the defining symptom of the tangled digital mind.
It captures the isolation perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And Uncle's response synthesizes exactly why this lack of touch is so dangerous.
Right, because he hands him the tea.
Yes, which is, again, a physical action, a transfer of warmth. And Uncle says, to touch is sometimes a heavier responsibility than to think.
Man.
If we break down the mechanics of that statement, abstract thought is largely risk-free. You can opine on structural inequalities from the safety of your keyboard.
And if someone gets mad, you just log off.
Exactly. If you're wrong or if people disagree, you just close the laptop. It costs you nothing physically.
Right.
But to touch the physical world, to engage with the messy reality right in front of you, that carries the risk of awkwardness, of immediate failure, of visceral consequences.
And that distinction between thinking and touching leads right into the absolute core dilemma of this deep dive.
Yes, it does.
They're sitting there in this silence, and Roger finally asks the big question that has been haunting him. He asks, "Uncle, if a person feels sorrow about something but does nothing, are they still responsible?"
The ultimate burden of the modern observer right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually need to put myself in the shoes of the listener here and push back on this a bit.
Oh, okay.
Because if we take that literally, it sounds like a recipe for a massive, paralyzing guilt trip.
Sure.
Say I'm scrolling and I see a devastating flood halfway across the world, or maybe a local fundraiser for a family that lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely feel that sorrow. But I don't donate, and I don't fly out to stack sandbags. I just close the app and go make dinner.
Yeah.
Am I morally failing?
That's tough.
If we are genuinely responsible for every single tragedy we witness online, how do we function without being completely crushed by the weight of the world?
Well, this raises an important question, and it is exactly the trap that has Roger so tangled up. He feels paralyzed because the digital age has forced us to conflate awareness with the capacity to act.
Oh, that's good.
But look at how Uncle reframes this. To answer Roger, Uncle doesn't look down at a screen. He looks out the physical window at a child outside who's just quietly counting stones on the pavement.
Grounding the conversation back in the immediate, unhurried present.
Exactly. And Uncle uses very precise, careful wording to dismantle this paralyzing dilemma. He tells Roger, sometimes a person is not responsible because they cannot act, but because they decide that they cannot act at all.
Oh, that is a subtle but massive distinction.
It really is.
The difference between a genuine inability to do something and the decision of inability.
It changes the entire moral framework because when you truly cannot act, when a situation is continents away or entirely beyond your physical, financial, or structural power, you are not bearing the moral failure of inaction.
Right, you're just physically limited.
The danger, Uncle points out, is when we let the sheer volume of global sorrow convince us to make a blanket decision that we are powerless everywhere. Roger actually admits, I'm afraid of deciding. And Uncle validates that. He says fear is natural. But when fear becomes your blanket excuse to retreat entirely into the abstract, you've lost the path.
You just shut down, you freeze.
Exactly.
And that hardened ego we talked about earlier takes over to protect you from the guilt of your own paralysis.
Yeah.
You stop placing your shoes properly because you've convinced yourself that since you can't fix the flood across the globe, the shoes don't matter.
You've diagnosed the exact mechanism. You abandon the local because you are overwhelmed by the global.
And right as this heavy truth is settling in over the tea, the physical world beautifully interrupts the theory.
I love this part.
The door knocks. It's Aunt, who was just passing by and felt like stopping in. And shortly after, nephew arrives. And the narrative explicitly tells us it wasn't a coincidence, but it wasn't planned either.
It's just organic.
Yeah, this organic, spontaneous gathering.
An organic gathering defined entirely by what is absent. The text makes a point to state that they are sitting together without screens, without notification sounds.
And without that digital interference, the nature of their communication completely changes. At makes this brilliant observation as they sit around the table.
She does.
She notes that on social media, people say so many things so quickly. But sitting in this living room, she says, words arrive more slowly.
Because the speed of communication fundamentally alters the depth of empathy.
Right.
Online, speed is equated with morality. If you don't react to a crisis immediately, you are deemed apathetic.
Oh, 100%.
But the nervous system isn't designed for instant, profound empathy. In Uncle's physical living room, slowness is a feature, not a bug. It allows the brain to actually process meaning rather than just reacting to stimuli.
And Nephew adds a layer to that, which I found stunning. He says that here, at the physical table, you can also see the face of the one who remains silent.
Yeah.
Because on a screen, silence is indistinguishable from absence. It's just a void in your notifications.
Right.
But in person, silence has texture. You can see someone processing an idea or grieving or just actively listening.
That touches on the biological reality of mirror neurons. When we are physically present with someone, we are reading their microexpressions, their breathing, their posture.
Yeah.
We are engaged in a silent, empathetic dialogue that is impossible in a text thread.
Completely impossible.
And that realization forces Roger to see that the things that are so incredibly easy to perform on a screen, outrage, moral posturing, solving the world's problems in a comments section.
Right.
Those actually require immense courage when you're looking into the faces of real human beings.
Which brings us to Uncle's conclusion for this part of the story, and it kind of feels like the thesis statement of the whole narrative.
It really does.
He looks around the table and calmly states, civilization begins at home, then on the street, and only at the end on the screen.
Look at the sequential order of that architecture.
Right.
From the innermost, most tangible reality, the home, the act of placing your shoes outward to the immediate community. Exactly. And only then, once that foundation of empathy is built, extending to the abstract digital realm, modern society has just completely inverted that process.
We really have.
We try to build our moral civilization on the screen first, while ignoring the people in our own living rooms.
And it leaves us tangled and exhausted.
Absolutely.
But, theory over tea is one thing. How does this mindset hold up when it hits the friction of the real world?
The real test.
Yeah. The narrative forces the characters to answer that immediately. They finish their tea and leave the house, and as they walk, the story notes that the road did not remain the same for each of them.
It is the ultimate pavement test. Can you take the philosophy of the quiet living room and apply it to the unpredictable, messy reality of the street?
So Roger is walking toward the bus stop, and he stumbles into a very common, very uncomfortable scene.
Mm-hmm.
There is a small commotion. An elderly man who operates a small street cart is arguing with a municipal officer. The officer has a notebook. He looks completely exhausted, and he is telling the old man he can't stay there. Yeah. And the old man is standing his ground, explaining he's been there since morning and isn't harming anyone.
And how is the environment reacting to this friction?
Well, the narrative notes that everyone kept walking.
Wow.
It is the ultimate physical manifestation of doom scrolling. People see the discomfort, they probably feel a brief flicker of sorrow or annoyance, and they just swipe past it in real life.
Exactly.
But Roger's steps naturally begin to slow down.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because Roger doesn't suddenly turn into an action hero.
No, not at all.
The narrative explicitly states his internal monologue. It says, it doesn't seem like something big, but it didn't sit right with me.
Right.
It's an awkward, totally mundane municipal dispute. It's not glamorous. But he feels that friction. Nephew and Aunt, who are walking separately behind him, also happen to stop and observe.
And nephew mutters, sometimes you don't know what to step into.
Yeah.
That hesitation nephew voices is the exact fear Uncle was talking about earlier, the fear of deciding.
Oh, wow. Yes.
When we witness street-level conflict, the bystander effect kicks in. The cognitive load of intervening is incredibly high.
Because it's uncomfortable.
Yes. It's much easier and feels much safer to just keep walking and maybe later post a vague status update about how poorly street vendors are treated in the city.
Oh, wow.
Right. That would be thinking without the responsibility of touching.
But Roger remembers Uncle's words.
Yeah.
He remembers that you aren't off the hook just because you decide you can't act. So he chooses to take a step forward.
He does.
And the mechanics of his intervention are so important here. He doesn't shout at the officer. He doesn't pull out his phone to record it and shame anyone.
No.
He doesn't escalate the conflict to prove his own righteousness.
He is bringing the unhurried parasympathetic energy of Uncle's living room straight into the friction of the street.
He steps up calmly and asks the officers, "Is there a misunderstanding?" And then he offers a highly practical, unglamorous bridge between the two of them. He asks, if the gentleman packs up for today so the officer can clear his notebook, can he perhaps find a new place tomorrow?
Notice how he de-escalates the situation by validating the reality of both parties.
Yeah, he doesn't take a side.
Exactly. He doesn't make the municipal worker the villain. He sees a tired man just trying to do his job. And he doesn't treat the old man like a helpless victim. He respects his dignity. By doing that, he lowers the defensive walls of everyone involved.
And it actually works. The officer pauses, looks at his notebook, and the tension just breaks.
Wow.
He agrees. He tells the man to pack up for today, but gently warns him not to come back to this exact spot tomorrow.
Right.
As the situation dissolves, the old man lowers his head and says, "May God bless you." And the story notes it isn't even clear who he is saying it to, the officer or Roger.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the narrative is entirely stripping away the Hollywood climax.
Totally.
It took a few minutes. It was quiet. Aunt takes a deep breath as they watch the vendor pack up and says, nothing big happened. But I feel a sense of relief inside.
And nephew vocalizes the realization they are all having. He says, maybe this is exactly what civilization is. Not being able to solve everything, but choosing where to stand.
That is the core insight of the entire piece. Roger didn't cure poverty. He didn't dismantle the municipal bureaucracy or fix the systemic issues of the city.
Right.
He couldn't solve everything, but he refused to fall back into the decision that he could do nothing.
He chose a place to stand.
Yes. And the text emphasizes a critically important detail right in this moment. No one applauded. No one recorded a video.
There was absolute no viral reward for what he just did. No retweets. No one in the comments validating his morality.
Real-world steps towards civilization are almost entirely unapplauded. They are invisible to the algorithms.
Yeah.
Yet, what is the internal psychological result for Roger?
As he walks away to catch his bus, the narrative says the weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. By doing something incredibly small and physical, the massive abstract weight of his digital paralysis actually lifts. He discovers that the grand ideals we scream about in virtual spaces demand small, unapplauded, awkward steps in reality.
He successfully transitioned from the safety of abstract thought to the heavy responsibility of the touch. And not only did he survive it, it cured his tangled mind.
Which brings us to a beautiful, quiet wrap-up of this narrative sequence. It's later that evening. Roger is back home in his own space. He gets a text message from Uncle.
Okay.
And Uncle simply asks, "What did you do on the road today, Mr. Roger?"
A question carefully framed around action. Not what he thought about the road or what he felt about the news, but what he did in the physical world.
Yeah. Roger smiles, and he writes back this incredibly brief, powerful reply. He says, "I stood somewhere, brother."
Wow.
And Uncle replies immediately, "That is enough." Now, clearly, standing your ground is an ongoing, exhausting practice. The story hints that this is a daily discipline.
Of course.
But for today, for this specific moment of overcoming the paralysis, it is enough.
It is the foundational step. You place your shoes and then you stand somewhere.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening to this right now, navigating your own tangled mind, I think the takeaway is incredibly liberating.
Definitely.
True, ethical participation in this chaotic world doesn't require you to fix the whole thing today. You do not have to carry the moral weight of every single tragedy you scroll past.
Right.
Your responsibility starts exactly where you are physically located. It starts with how you place your shoes when you walk in the door.
Yes.
It starts with how you honor the silence of the people sitting at your kitchen table. And it starts with where you choose to stand in those mundane, everyday, totally unapplauded moments on the street.
And that concept of the unapplauded moment leaves us with a necessary and perhaps deeply uncomfortable final question to consider.
No, I'm ready.
The narrative makes it a deliberate point to highlight that Roger's real-life action was captured on no video and received no public cheers.
Right.
If the modern human psyche has become so fundamentally conditioned to performative goodness, where almost every action requires a digital audience to feel validated and real, are we literally losing the psychological capacity to do unobserved good? Is that hardened ego we discussed at the very beginning not just a shield against the world's overwhelming pain, but actually our defense mechanism against a physical reality where invisible actions no longer yield a dopamine hit?
Oh, man. Something heavy to chew on today. Look for your quiet place to stand. Catch you next time.